story that is most maddening. This is a story that should enrage you and have you understand why we should have had a public option, why the healthcare reform bill that we passed was not good enough because it left the private insurance system exactly as it is. Now, you will also see that some of the reforms that were done were absolutely necessary. Will they actually work is a different question. So what's the story? Well, it looks like federal regulators and investigators are looking into what WellPoint is doing when women get breast cancer. WellPoint is the largest insurance company in the country. They insure about almost 1 out of every 9 American. And they have subsidiaries all over the country. And apparently they have an algorithm that if you get breast cancer, it automatically goes to try to cancel your policy. So the computer will say, all right, start looking at the policy to see if there's anything wrong at all. If you filled out a form wrong, or you didn't mention a pre-existing condition, or what they claim is a pre-existing condition, et cetera, et cetera. It automatically does it, okay? And so many people have been dumped from their policies because of this system. Why? Because treating cancer is costly. And WellPoint is in the business of making profits. They're not in the business of helping you. They're not in the business of treating sick people. They're in the business of making money. So now this is not idle speculation. As I said, federal investigators looking into this. Now let's look at the facts a little bit. You might say, oh, well, look, you know what? And WellPoint says, no, we're just looking for fraud because we don't, you know why? Because we want to protect the rest of our customers because otherwise their bills will be higher. Yeah, their bills will be higher if we have to pay for the actual insurance that we're supposed to pay out while still making your grotesque profits, right? So, for example, they looked at 90 cases where WellPoint said, okay, no, we're rescinding your contract, your insurance, we're canceling it. Good luck to you and your breast cancer. You're done, okay? In not one of the cases was it a legitimate claim. Every single one had been denied on nonsense. Things like, oh, you didn't claim you had acne, so that's it, we're not treating you for breast cancer. You didn't tell us that you have problems with your bone density, partly because that particular woman didn't even know. So that's it, we're not treating you for breast cancer. In every single one of the cases investigated out of those 90, they all should have kept their insurance. And understand this, okay? For all those conservatives who argue, oh, well, you know what, these deadbeats, etc. Every one of these women had paid all of their premiums every single year. They gave to WellPoint, they gave to WellPoint, they gave to them, and then at the end, when they needed them, they got the rug pulled out from underneath them. Why? Because they do it automatically. They don't even consider it. Now, WellPoint says, oh, no, you don't understand. Oh, breast cancer, we care a lot about it. We give to charity. We talk about studies where African-American women are not getting treated as much for breast cancer, etc. Our CEO is a woman, Angela Brailey, and she cares deeply about this issue. See, this is where I begin to think, wait, look, does evil exist in the world? I mean, does Angela Brailey have no idea what's happening at our company? None. She doesn't know how they make money. You know how much money they save from rescission, the top insurance companies in the country? Because the House committee looked into this. They save $300 million a year. By not covering you, of course they save that money. If you give them your premiums every single month for your whole lifetime, and they don't pay you when you get sick, will they save money? Of course they will. WellPoint alone, some numbers say that it gets over $100 million a year by kicking people out when they get sick. You can't trust the private companies to take care of you. That's not their job, okay? They're going to look to maximize their profits. That's why we screwed up this healthcare thing. We should have never just left it as the only option. It's one thing if, hey, you know what, I'd like to buy a Pepsi or a Coke. What difference does it make? I'd like to buy a Nike or a Reebok. Is Reebok still in business? Okay, what difference does it make? That's where the free market makes a ton of sense. When it's your life on the line and they make money from making sure you don't get treatment, it doesn't make sense. Another woman, this was one of the lucky ones. She got treated for breast cancer. And then she had complications. She got a staph infection. After she got a staph infection, well, then that was really costly. So they decided, no, at this point, we look back at your old forms. No, that one, not the old forms. That was a woman with breast cancer that was in the Reuters article, and Reuters broke the story. Okay, this particular woman, they said, we sent you some forms to fill out, and you didn't fill them out, so that's it. We're canceling your policy. She's like, you sent them to the wrong address. You sent them to my old address. I didn't get them. They're like, sad day for you. Ha ha. They don't pay for her surgery. So now, for the last 18 months, she barely survived and went broke. She worked as an art dealer, etc. She was well-to-do, had a Mercedes, even the article says, and now she's on food stamps. And she says, I had no idea how hard it was when you are out of choices and you're poor. And through no fault of your own. These are the people that Rush Limbaugh would call a bum. They say, oh yeah, get up and work. She literally can only stand 20 or 30 minutes a day because the surgeries devastated her, and partly because they didn't pay for the surgery she needed. The woman, again, that was specifically mentioned in the article that they canceled her policy because of acne, because she had acne earlier, she wound up testifying in front of Congress. You know what they did to her? They said, okay, we're pulling your, on a Monday she was going to get surgery because it was in both her breasts and it was really severe. On Friday, they say, we're canceling your insurance. You can't get the surgery. So she couldn't get the surgery. By the time she got it reinstituted, and ironically, with the help of Joe Barton, who's a Republican from Texas, her tumor had grown from 2 centimeters to 7 centimeters. And it was much worse shape. They almost killed her. And that's just one person. There's stories like this, thousands of stories. Let me give you more facts on how many cases that this affects. There was settlements in cases where they were denied coverage for 1,100 policyholders. Anthem Blue Cross, which is owned by WellPoint, settled that with a fine of $10 million. In February, there was a $1 million fine and $14 million in restitutions for 2,300 people denied. But you say, all right, look, they're paying these fines. In one case, it's $15 million, in another, it's $10 million, right? But remember, they're making so much more for kicking all those people out and some of them died. That's how they save money. They figure, hey, look, if I can delay it 5 months, somebody's tumor grew from 2 centimeters to 7 centimeters, they got lucky, they managed to survive. Well, others, they don't get lucky, they die. And when they die, they save WellPoint a ton of money. It is overwhelming how many people that this affects. And that is why they're looking into it right now. And in those 90 cases that I mentioned, it was a 2007 investigation from the California Department of Managed Healthcare that revealed that none of them got treated. Okay? Here's how we're getting screwed. These people make a living by denying you coverage after taking your hard-earned money all those years. And the guys who support them are the people inside Congress. You know who wrote the Senate version of the health care bill? It was Liz Fowler. You know who she used to work for before she went to go work for Max Baucus and write the bill? She worked for WellPoint. And Max Baucus says, well, I couldn't have written the bill without her. She wrote it. I know she did. Now, how does that make a difference? The House version of healthcare reform said that if they were going to do rescission on you, that you would get to do an independent external third-party review of that. And that until that review happened, you would keep your insurance. And that they would have to show clear and convincing evidence of fraud to kick you out. Because are there cases of insurance fraud? Of course there are, right? So if the insurance company says, look, I got a case of fraud, all right, well, I don't trust the insurance company to do it. They have a financial incentive to kick you out. You go to a third party, and that third party will decide. And that system, generally speaking, works. So that made sense. And you know what? You don't deny them the coverage in the short term because they could die if you deny them the coverage. Now, that was the House version. That got removed. Who removed it? Liz Fowler, who used to work at WellPoint, who wrote the Senate version. Now, there is not a third-party check in the bill, and people are concerned, oh, you know what? The health care bill is supposed to get rid of rescission. You don't want to know what the problem is? There's no enforcement. Right now, they have no idea how to enforce it because they didn't write it into the bill. They say, well, later, Health and Human Services could come up with a way of enforcing it. And they could, and I hope they do, and I hope they go to third-party enforcement, and I hope that they're smart about it. But why didn't we put it in the bill? It was in the bill, it got taken out by the same people who make an enormous amount of money to make sure you don't get treatment. Relying on this system of insurance is literally deadly. And when I think about the Angela Brayleys and the Liz Fowlers who claim to care so much about women's health, and then full well knowing they're running a program inside their own company, Liz Fowler was when she was at WellPoint, and then she winds up helping that system by writing the bill weaker, and Angela Braley does today as CEO. I wonder how they live with themselves. I mean, again, I'm not sure that there's such a thing as evil, but if there is, this is the quiet evil of our times. When you say, hey, you know what, I'll get paid a lot of money. And when some guy comes in here and tells me he's got an algorithm that denies women who get breast cancer treatment, I'll look the other way. And I'll continue to make a lot of money, and then I'll go and do charity events and pretend I care a lot about breast cancer. It's repulsive. Look, our lives are on the line. We have to change the system. If you think your insurance is going to cover you when you get sick, you're wrong. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't, and if you're a woman, you have even less chance of getting covered. Another category that they say is a red flag within insurance companies, and that triggers possible removal of your insurance, is if you dare to get pregnant. If you're a woman, these insurance companies are not your friend. I don't care how many women run them. That's a cover, okay? And they're not any of our friends. And they don't give a damn about our well-being. They care about making money. We got to change the system. We can't rely on these people when our lives are on the line.